What was that like going to India, studying with Guruji, right? You're this white American girl going over there. Can you break it down? Like, what was it like? And what was it not like that I would expect it to be like in a Hollywood movie?
Well, the first thing that it was just very far away. It was just a very long airplane trip. I mean, it was almost 20 years ago that my first trip was. And so this was India, not as you would experience India today, but India before cell phones really hit the market, before the technology boom, sort of like a different India. And in India, some part of my heart is nostalgic for, and some part of my heart is really happy that, that there's a new India. So, the past is gone, we embrace it, we love it, and then there's the turning of a new page, and you love the new as well. When I first went to India, I didn't have anyone's address except for Guruji's address. So I remember that I read Guruji's book, and I knew I wanted to go to India. So I bought a ticket, and I got a 10-year visa out of pure faith, and because it was a better deal. I think that like the 6-month visa was something like $100, and the 10-year visa was $120. So I felt this was a good deal. My mom said, "How do you know you're going to like it?" And I said, it's a leap of faith. And it was 24 hours of travel just to land in India.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Miami.
In Miami. Okay.
So I'm a native Floridian.
Okay.
Which was a rare variety, but there's more of us now these days.
Okay.
And I landed in India. And the first thing that and still to this day, it hits me every time I go there, how similar the plants are to Florida. So there are palm trees in Florida. I was living in New York at the time when I went to India, and and the temperature was more like Florida. So there was an element of my body that sort of felt comfy there because the humid air and the tropical sort of, plants and the foliage around, and it was, quite familiar. What was completely non-familiar was the language, the people, the culture. I went into a car that was sort of called a taxi, but with these old ambassador kind of vehicles. I'd never seen one of those before, and I got in the back, and it was like a 4.5-hour journey, and this car dropped me off at the house of Sri Pattabhi Jois, which is where he was teaching, and I just dropped my backpack and walked in, and the Guruji was the first person I saw. And he looked at me. You had to write a letter in order to request being able to get into the yogashala, and the rule was if you don't hear back, you can go.
What does that mean?
That means you send this letter and you buy a ticket from Faith, and if you don't get a letter back from Guruji saying you can't go, you're good.
Okay, that's fascinating.
It's the opposite of like Travelocity confirmations or whatnot. You know what I mean? We get like a travel confirmation. It's the opposite of that.
That's the first leap of faith, really.
It was then. Now it's much different. Now you get a little confirmation. Things are quite different now. But so I dropped my backpack. I walked in. I looked into Guruji's eyes, and the first thing he said to me was, "You wrote letter?" And I said, "Yes, Guruji, I wrote the letter. Tomorrow is 6 a.m. You come." First thing I did, my face was on the ground. My hands were on his feet in the traditional gesture of pranam. And I had the people said you have to bow down to him. And I didn't want to bow down to someone I didn't know what this meant. I'm going to bow down to someone. I was studying feminist studies in graduate school, and I had spent a lot of time on the plane thinking of how I was going to explain that while I do respect this as an element of traditional Indian culture, you see, I'm a modern American woman and I don't need to bow down to any man. Thank you very much. And I had this whole spiel written in my head. And before I could say what was up or what was down, I was flat on the ground, my hands on his feet. Thank you, Guruji. It was like my heart leapt up and took over. And I knew I'd met my teacher at that moment.
Why? Why did you do that?
My heart just leapt up. Why do you fall in love with someone? Something in my heart just said yes.
Felt the energy.
And I think what it was, and I look back now and I can see I guess there were two things. The first is that I'd never met anyone like him in my life, and it was just his presence, his power, gave me faith and gave me hope, and it was as though I was in the presence of peace when I looked into his eyes. And so I wanted that. So it was like something in me said yes. And the second thing was that he was an answer to a question that I was asking. I didn't know I was asking it, which is, how to believe in yourself, how to have faith, and how can I live a more peaceful life? That's really why I started the yoga practice. And Guruji was that answer to me. And he gave me faith, hope, and really a foundation for the practice. And I'm just so grateful for that.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, learn from the best minds in the world, and connect with a community of passionate people building the best versions of themselves. Just click on the link below, and I'll see you on the inside.